So, see if you can spot my predicament here. Do I do an X-Men video this week? Or do I do a Swamp Thing video this week? Both properties I love and both are getting renewed attention in the media, so kind of in a bind here. But to be fair, I did talk about Marvel a lot in these past couple of videos, so maybe it is time to give Marvel a rest and move on to Swamp Thing. And besides, even if the new Swamp Thing show turns out to be a copy of the Wes Craven movie from the 80s, at least they waited more than 15 years to do another rehash of that. And then, of course, this happens. How was I supposed to win here? Hello, Internet! Welcome to Tales Showcase, where the only thing scarier than mass genocide is some light gardening. I'm your host, the Watcher of New Earth. Today we return to the adventures of the Thing from the Louisiana Lagoon, and we're actually picking up right after the issue that we discussed in my last Swamp Thing video. So, go check that out if you want to. Only if you're really, if you're feeling it, That's the beauty of YouTube. You can watch these things out of order. Does it really matter? I mean, you're probably not going to get a lot of elements of this story, but I'm sure it'll be explained in context. Because, I'm not a hack. I know what I'm doing. Sorta. Sometimes. Anyway, let's get started. This is Song of the Swamp Thing number 22 through 24.
The story opens back in the Louisiana swamp as Abigail and Matt Cable search for Swamp Thing who, in their eyes, is still their friend Alec Holland. They suddenly come across him lying in the water, apparently dead. As they stand there, freaking out about their friend becoming vegetation, a figure watches them from the shadows. An orange hand rises and is suddenly sprayed to appear as if it has skin on it.
Tired of those unsightly scabs? Unsatisfied with your tan line? Has most of the flesh fallen off your face and torso? If so, try SkinWiz. SkinWiz. It's not FDA approved, but it is coming soon to a back alley near you.
A man steps out from the shadows and introduces himself as Dr. Jason Woodrue, who played an integral part in Swamp Thing's escape in the previous story. He explains how he came to know Swamp Thing, but tends to frame the story in a way that makes it seem as if he helped Swamp Thing escape out of compassion for the creature, as opposed to wanting revenge on his employer. He goes on to explain that Swamp Thing realized that he was never actually Alec Holland, and has since given up on living, returning to its life as a plant. He even tears off an orange growth and says that it's similar to a yam, and possibly even edible.
Oh boy, you must be a real scream at parties, buddy.
Abby and Matt, understandably perturbed by this realization, decide to leave. As Woodrue stays behind to do more experiments, we enter Swamp Thing's mind as he's undergoing an intense fever dream. In it, his past life events are all blurred together, creating a surreal memory of his wedding day that culminates in his deceased wife being swallowed by the ground. He tries to get help in digging her out, but Matt says that he needs a mud suit if he wants to start shoveling. He helps him get into a brown Swamp Thing suit, but Abby quickly realizes he's not breathing and tells Matt to get him out. After a bit of scraping, they realize that it's only an empty husk, and Alec Holland is no longer inside.
I really wish I could tell you that's as depressing as this issue gets. I really do.
We get a brief glimpse of Abby and Matt's home life as his seeming disinterest in her leaves her feeling alone and paranoid of him leaving her. Back in the swamp, Woodrue continues his experiment as it seems that Swamp Thing and all the surrounding vegetation are all in sync, with no discernible difference between them. Woodrue seeks to also be in tune with the plants, which is what he's attempting to achieve with these tests. We return to Swamp Thing's dreamscape as he carries his wife along. He comes across giant worms having a cookout, apparently dining on the corpse of Alec Holland. They tell him to join them and ask if he's Jewish, seeing as how they are plain Aryan worms.
Wordplay of the frickin' century!
They tell him to dig in, but when he looks back, he says there's nothing left. The worms, however, tell him that they've left him the best part, the humanity, and urge him not to lose it. After a brief pause, he sets his wife down at the table and walks away with the skeleton, apologizing for not being able to carry both.
Wow, that was that was intense. Not gonna lie. Oh boy. Better lighten the mood. So let's think. Men ain't swamp, huh? Am I right, ladies? Am I right, ladies? Let's just keep going.
The next day, Matt and Abby have returned as she begs Alec to come back, claiming he's not a plant and the most wonderful man she's ever known. Meanwhile, Matt, her husband, just kind of stands there.
Fellas, I know we all get a little, let's say, anxious or self-conscious when our partner starts complimenting some other guy, be it a longtime friend of theirs or just some really hot waiter. You know? But I'm here to tell you that that's probably nothing to be worried about. You know, just relax, you're fine. If she starts doing it to a fern, though, then, you know, you probably messed up somewhere down the line. You might have to be worried about that.
Back in his lab, Woodrow uses a flower in an attempt to reach the green, the catch-all term for elemental energy for plants, through Swamp Thing. Meanwhile, old Swampy continues to trudge along with his increasingly battered humanity. He asks to rest, but humanity refuses. This angers Swamp Thing, who asks him why he shouldn't just chuck him into the river. Humanity answers by saying that he can't let go because, otherwise, there would be no point in running. Swamp Thing seemingly agrees, and lays down, seemingly suffocating his humanity. Woodrow, meanwhile, successfully links to the green and is immediately overwhelmed by all of the plants in the world talking to him. However, he quickly gets a hold of it and seemingly becomes the mouthpiece for the green. The next issue starts with Swamp Thing exploring the green and finding a red anomaly. Elsewhere, a trio of friends are in a car as one of them sees something. "Hey, Dumont! Dumont, you comatose blob of butter! Stewie just saw the Jolly Green Giant! Isn't that totally sick?"
Wow, that was aggressively 80s.
One of them goes to investigate, and when he returns, his friends have been murdered by vines. He runs, but is quickly captured and murdered by Woodrow. Swamp Thing continues to examine the intrusion, but is only able to get the name Woodrow. However, since they never met, he struggles to piece things together. Abby, meanwhile, is out for a walk and comes across the murdered teen. Vines begin to grab at her, and she runs, screaming for Alec. Swamp Thing continues to struggle to understand and begins reminiscing about his former life, but can only remember being shot and waking up cold and wet.
So just another Tuesday, am I right?
Woodrow arrives in the small town of LaCroix and begins destroying buildings to draw out the residents. When he has their attention, he orders someone to bring a video camera and orders half the population back in their homes. When a boy returns, he's ordered to start filming, and Woodrow proceeds to seal up the houses with vegetation while the plants inside the house start producing more oxygen. The spike in oxygen causes the people indoors to become more erratic and anxious. Soon, someone lights a cigarette, and the spark creates a chain explosion that kills everyone. The boy is then sent on his way to show Woodrow's message. Things start connecting for Swamp Thing as he realizes Woodrow's part in his misery. Abby, however, has now reached him and begs him to wake up as the vines continue to rip at her. Swamp Thing suddenly rises up in time and the vines retract. The two look at each other as Abby tentatively asks if he's Alec. Swamp Thing answers, no.
It's Mr. Holland to you.
The reunited duo go on their way as in another town the police receive Woodrow's message. Seeing the urgency in the matter, they quickly contact Washington, who in turn contact the Justice League. The officer who had seen the video leaves to go home and once there, begins destroying his plants, garden, lawn, and even a tree he and his wife planted years ago.
You know, and I realized that was a heartbreaking, harrowing experience, but gotta give the guy props for his initiative, you know? This is the kind of guy you need on your side in the apocalypse.
Woodrow, meanwhile, continues to terrorize the citizens of LaCroix as he explains that the Green told him to expunge all humans from the planet, which would usher in the Green Millennium.
So, couple of things actually. Plants tell time. What's up with that? Or at least they have an inherent concept of time and a system of measurement for it? That's weird, but it's the only way that Green Millennium has any sort of meaning. And also, a millennium is only 1,000 years, which I know that seems like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, not that long. So what happens at the end of it? Does the animals and people come back? Or do the plants just get bored and decide to, like, not be the rulers of Earth? How does that work? How does that work? How does that make sense? You know? It seems like a lot of work and a lot of effort just for minimal reward. What I'm trying to get at is that once you take away the grandiose speeches and the horrific murders, your plan is very silly.
Before Woodrue can continue, though, Swamp Thing arrives. The next issue starts with the Justice League watching the message and reviewing their options. When it seems hopeless, Green Arrow angrily snaps about how they were so busy keeping an eye on the big cities that no one paid attention to the little places.
Alright, settle down, leotard boy. Well, while it's true that most people are negligent towards smaller rural areas, Woodrue only became the world's greatest hippie a couple hours ago. So this is around the time that you'd be getting around to helping them even if you were watching that city.
Back in LaCroix, Swamp Thing and Woodrue continue to stand off. He asks Swamp Thing why he returned from his rest, and then comes to the conclusion that it must be out of pride and wanting to see Woodrue's conquest.
Okay, alternate explanation, hear me out. You're an idiot.
Woodrue offers Swamp Thing a woman to kill so they can enjoy the victory together. And he swats Woodrue away. This leads to an intense plant-on-plant fight, the likes of which no one has ever seen. Actually, he just drops a building on Swamp Thing. It's over pretty quickly. He then turns his attention to Abby, but before he can do anything, a man arrives wielding a chainsaw. He's quickly dealt with and Woodrue grabs the chainsaw. Before he can attack, Swamp Thing returns and breaks his arm. Swamp Thing then tells Woodrue that this needs to stop because he is harming the green. He tells Woodrue that this destruction is not because of the green, it's because of his corrupting influence, his rage and insanity driving the plants to reflect his own desires. Woodrue says that he's lying, and soon plants will be the only thing remaining on the planet. Swamp Thing asks, what will change the oxygen back into carbon dioxide when everything else is dead?
Ooh, yeah, right, yeah, didn't think of that one. Ha. Well, this is embarrassing for you. You know, at least it's nice to think that plants are also able to be swindled by short-sighted morons who make promises for better lives without really considering the potential fallout that can be caused from the actions required to reach their desired outcome. It's just nice to know that humans aren't the only ones.
The change happens quickly. All of a sudden, Woodrue can no longer communicate with the plants and begins scrambling, attempting to get back in good graces with them, but to no avail. He freaks out and flees back to his lab, leaving Abby and Swamp Thing alone. They journey back together as she asks what he meant when he said he wasn't Alec. He tells her that Alec Holland is dead, and that it took a while for him to come to terms with that, but assures her that he is happy. Woodrue, meanwhile, hurries to apply his skin disguise as he senses his captors approaching. Superman and Green Lantern arrive, and Woodrue tries to act natural. However, because his plant face has become overgrown, and he applied the spray hastily, it leads to this horrific melted face that will never not scare me. The heroes ask what happened to him, and he assumes they mean his arm, which he says he broke in an accident. I was just, doing something normal. Driving a car, fishing, one of those things us men do.
Oh, this guy! Maybe not king of plants, but certainly king of smooth.
And the comic ends with Swamp Thing returning to his home, finally content with himself.
And I'm probably going to get some pushback on this, but if all it took was blowing up a couple of houses in Louisiana to get us this really cute picture of Swamp Thing, it was kind of worth it, Yeah, anyway, that was Saga of the Swamp Thing number 22 through 24. And it's fantastic!
This story helped expand on the game-changing revelation of Swamp Thing's origin. While he's technically not an active part of the story until the third act, this story helps us get a real handle on who the character is now going forward. The frightening imagery in his dreams depict the identity crisis he's in, and the trauma that comes from having your entire worldview just ripped away from you. His storyline is mirrored with Woodrue, who starts as a person but spends the entire story trying to become who he isn't, while Swamp Thing attempts to come to terms with who he is. Both act as perfect foils for one another, which is why their final battle for the green feels so satisfying, while not necessarily being a typical superhero slugfest. The art, while not being the traditional polished look of DC books, fits perfectly with the scary, grimy feel of this story. Even the Justice League, who might have felt a little shoehorned into the story, don't feel that out of place, due in large part to the consistent art style that adapts them to this world.
And let's be honest, the only real reason I'm looking at 3 at once in this video is because they're so good that I can't really make fun of them. At least not as much as with other comics. So the only hope I have to making it even close to 10 minutes on this video is to review them in bulk. And with that said, definitely check this out if you ever have any spare time. Like ever, do it now. do it while you're watching another one of these videos. That's fine. I don't mind. You know, just put on the video and like step away from your computer or phone or whatever and go read Swamp Thing. It's great. Definitely do that. That's the smartest choice you can make today. Anyway, as always, thank you for joining me and I'll see you next time. This is the Watcher of New Earth, signing off. Hi, I'm the Watcher of New Earth. If you like that video, hit that subscribe button, maybe even the bell icon. It probably does something, right? I mean, YouTube hired someone to put it there, so the least we could do is show appreciation by hitting it.